AI in Action, Halldale's podcast series, which looks at how civil aviation, military, and other safety-critical industries are adopting AI in training. In this episode, host Andy Fawkes is joined by Alex Smith from Raytheon.
We'll see challenges to ethical and moral judgment.
Morley from Capita.
There is absolutely no doubt that AI is here to stay, and the adoption of it is only going to increase and expand.
And Wyatt from Varjo.
Some need, therefore, government to step up and be willing to fund those activities sooner rather than later.
AI in Action.
Hello, my name's Andy Fawkes. I'm Special Correspondent for the Halldale Group. This is our first AI in Action of 2026, and we're going to sort of take that as an opportunity to look at the here and now and also look at the future. We've got a fantastic set of guests as normal, and it's really fun. I'm really looking forward to listening to their views myself, actually. So we are here to help you navigate the world of AI in training and education. I think today will be mostly military, but we do look outside, and some of our other AI actions looked at civil aviation as well, of course. So our three guests, and they will introduce and talk about themselves very soon, is Morley, who's the MC, who's the Managing Director for Capita for Project Selborne. We've got Alex Smith, who's the Chief Technology Officer of Training Transformation Services at Raytheon UK, and Wyatt, who's the Chief Product Officer at Varjo, and no doubt they will expand on what I've just said. So as I've just briefly said, we're going to kind of look at the here and now, look at the future, and how we're going to get to that future, like a strategy. So I'd really like to start with you, if you don't mind. Could you just give us some context about what you do and Project Selborne, and how you're using AI now, or maybe your most immediate plans?
So Project Selborne is a consortium under the banner of Team Fisher, alongside Capita, who prime the consortium. We have Raytheon delivering training design and equipment support, Elbit Systems UK as our simulation partner, and Fujitsu, who deliver IT and IT services. And then, interestingly, there was something that we could potentially sort of unpack sort of throughout the questions this morning. We also have an academic partner in the University of Lincoln on board within the consortium as well. So we're 5 years into a 12-year contract, both delivering and transforming and modernising Royal Navy shore-based training. So 14 sites across the UK, phase one training from day one at Raleigh and BRNC, through to phase two training for branches across Salton, Collingwood, submarine training that's moving from HMS Raleigh to a purpose-built submarine capability training centre, RNSTC, on the Clyde, and everything in between, right the way through to sort of career training and accredited degrees that sit in there. So from an AI perspective, quite a rich tapestry of opportunity for us to be able to deploy capabilities, not just from Capita, but from across the tier one partners, and also supporting subcontractors within our ecosystem of suppliers. Probably three highlights that I sort of draw out this morning, where we're either in the pilot stage at the moment, looking to roll out in more detail over the next sort of couple of years towards the sort of 2030 timeframe that we're discussing this morning, is a scheduling optimization engine, which uses AI to optimize the sequence through which courses are built and modules of courses are built to move a cohort of trainees through the training system. And that will allow us and the customer to look at training as a system rather than a previous very linear left to right progression. And also allow very rapid replanning and what if scenario of increases in quantities of trainees, increases in numbers of instances of courses, which hitherto had been done, a lot of it by hand or by an Excel spreadsheet. The other is using part of our ecosystem in a company called Prism, who are bringing adaptive learning pathways into the contract. And we are going through the initial stages of secure by design, and then into rolling out training that's at the official level at the moment, around basic maths and engineering skills. And that will use AI to determine the optimized pathway for the individual learner or trainee through a set of course material. And then the final area is we use a small company called How2. And How2 is a platform that supports our trainers and educators and very much sort of works alongside University of Lincoln, where we're upskilling both uniformed and contracted staff who deliver training. And that allows us to use AI techniques and support to allow teachers, instructors to plan their lessons more effectively and efficiently as well. So those are sort of three sort of top level areas where we're bringing AI into the Selborne contract at the moment.
So planning and personalisation kind of ideas.
Yeah, well, absolutely. So the aim of the contract is to get better trained warfighters to the front line faster. And so certainly with SOE and a BRISM, if you're able to block up your courses into modules, and we're in the process of doing that in the Defence Diving School at the moment, and you then build those modules very much from a skills base and competency basis rather than everybody needs to learn everything before they go off to do the job that they are being trained to do. You then allow the customer to be able to set the demand signal in terms of, I need this individual to be, or this group of individuals only to be trained in 80% of this material in order to be able to do their jobs. So you can block that up, take accredited prior learning if it's an accredited course, take that into account, but also previous experience and previous competencies as well. And if half the course attending those modules have already got the competencies in some way, shape or form, then you can take chunks of that course out, speed up the learner journey, and then use a BRISM to make it even more bespoke, tailored and faster.
And Alex, thank you very much, Aid. Alex, could you talk in similar lines, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Clearly, as Aid said, we are part of the the Selborne consortium, and we work very closely with the team over there. We've been driving forward with, as I said in the previous podcast, with a company called Maint, so Scott AI. A small company, but with a great capability in the main software, and we've been transforming that into working with them on their roadmap in terms of how to add in learning. It was a technical documentation capability, but because we bring in huge amounts of data to develop out the training, we needed we recognized we needed AI to support us on that with our courseware developers and our media developers. So we've spent the last year, as you know, we mentioned previously, building out that program, adding things like the Joint Service Publication 822, that's the training publication. We've embedded that into the large language model. We've taken the Team Fisher model of pedagogy and embedded that, Bloom's taxonomy, all the kind of good things that you would expect in training to add into that LLM so that it recognizes how training should be built. We've run through our pilot, so as Aid says now, we've run through our research. We've found where we want to find efficiencies and how we safely train people to use the tool. And that's been a big drive for us this year in terms of still keeping the human in the loop, but how do we train them to recognize the pitfalls of using AI? So we built a course out on that, and we can now train our teams to use the software. It's a very simple software, but you still need to recognize things like hallucination, contextual bias, those kind of things. We're now advanced on that, and what we've also done at the same time is with that company, we've built a new module. So announcing that here today, we built a new module that links into the search engine, the LLM and semantic search, and allows the content that we discover in the search to then be transferred into practical documentation. So we built into Word documentation, Excel, those kind of things. So it goes into all of the suite of that. So what we're seeing is really how we're using this as for our complex platforms we deliver, and we're working with areas like Type 31 destroyer, obviously submarine environment. How do we take all those massive complex data, put it through our semantic search, and then transfer it into a capability or documentation that's useful to us? That new module, as I said, has just been finished, and we aim to then pilot that across one of our platform programs, and talking with Aid on Friday and meeting with his team very soon, we're going to bring that into what we call one of the epochs, hopefully, which is a change program that Aid mentioned, the transformation programs, and see how we can drive that efficiency into our team. So giving the customer, using the AI to deliver more excitement, more delight for less time, really. So it's really that sort of efficiencies it brings to our design teams.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Alex. And Patrick, could you talk about what you're doing now and how you're using AI as a company?
So we make visual systems, which is particularly in this case, XR headsets for training. So our classic use case for us would be, let's say, a cockpit simulator, where you'd be in a real physical cockpit. What you'd see out the windows would be virtualized, but what you see ahead of you is the real world. And so we kind of blend virtual and physical together in order to create training scenarios. And we're deployed now across over 100 programs globally. Typically, we're complementing training inside classic domes to create more training opportunities with mixed reality training in general. So for us, I think AI is used probably less in the sense about LLMs and textual data stuff, and more in terms of sort of visual qualities, physical AI, spatial AI, all those kind of things. I think one of our most exciting collaborations right now is around how can we enhance the quality of the real world content you see inside the XR headsets. So one of the limitations often in mixed reality is how well you can capture the real world. And we're working right now with our investors and partners NVIDIA to do AI upscaling, so super resolution basically, to enhance the quality of the camera feeds we capture in real time, so we can kind of capture details that weren't necessarily in the camera feed itself and improve the quality of the visuals. That's kind of thinking about how do you improve just the raw performance of the headset itself. There's other features we're building now around AI segmentation. So how do you separate out real world objects from virtual objects in real time? So I can know that this cup, for example, I'm holding here should be seen in the virtual scene, not in the real scene. And that creates more ways to create mixed reality content more easily. We're also working on topics around how do you enable real-time mission debrief. So how can you capture data from the pilot, feed that back in a system which can monitor what's happening, are they meeting their training goals with some partners to allow better evaluation of training outcomes. And I think the last thing we're doing is around scene capture. So how can we create synthetic content by taking pictures from drones or other cameras to create 3D environments that can be used for training later on.
That's fascinating. Thank you very much, Patrick. I mean, it isn't just textual, as you said. We need to think about the broader AI and other modes, multimodal, and fascinating. So just, I think for our listeners, we've got a great kind of view of the world as it is now. Lots of things going on, and things are not just being talked about, but actually being implemented, or so I believe. I mean, going back to you, Aid, it's only 4 years away. How do you, I mean, maybe as a company, you know, there's some secret here, but I mean, how do you see the world in 2030, looking at current trajectories and maybe current customer needs as well? Could you paint a picture of where you think the world might be in this space in just 2030?
Well, I can certainly try and get a crystal ball out. So I think fundamentally, I think sort of two areas really. There is absolutely no doubt that AI is here to stay, and the adoption of it is only going to increase and expand. But I think sort of twofold really. In the background and in terms of making day-to-day life more effective, more efficient, better use of time, rather than taking the human out of the loop. And I think certainly that's one of the concerns I think you sort of see in the defence space, is that AI taking over and completely removing the human, particularly out of the sort of decision-making cycle and the targeting cycle, but certainly speeding things up. So my CEO in Capita would say, you know, he would expect to see by 2030, you know, a large chunk of human tasks that are around that sort of 10-15 minute mark being completely swallowed up by AI. And so progression of that, I think, is fundamentally about upskilling the workforce. If we're going to make sure that we are broad adopters of AI, we get the maximum benefits from it, then I think it's about making sure that our workforce, both how we deliver training through Selborne, we upskill our training workforce so they're able to impart skills around adoption and use of AI more effectively. But also as a workforce, we're able to make sure that we upskill our people in just some of the basics, sort of more effective and efficient use of things like Copilot, how to use prompting to be as effective as you possibly can be, how to write very simple, basic agents that will make your life easier on a day-to-day basis. I think that will be sort of one area where we'll start to see sort of fairly significant strides forward. Specifically in the Selborne space, the programs that I've mentioned will sort of roll on into the next 3-year block of modernisation that we're contracted to deliver for the RN. But I would see in this sort of time frame as well, a lot of the sort of a shift, much more of a shift towards emulation, simulation, synthetics that we're already using to train the RN, but exploiting some of those technologies that Patrick alluded to there. So AI embedded within simulation and synthetic systems to make them more realistic, to make the feedback loop to the trainer and trainee more quick, and to allow more realistic injects back into the training system from the front line as well, so that we're able to take lessons learned on operations, feed those into the training system, and a training system that almost teaches itself to be more realistic and more challenging and demanding of the trainee.
No, very very interesting. And I think I mean, Alex, I don't know whether you want to sort of build on that.
Yeah, absolutely, Andy. I think I agree. I think we're in a space where human in the loop is vital, and I agree with everything that Aid's saying. We've commissioned a report via a fantastic company called In Tandem, who've been working alongside us. And they've reviewed a lot of the military documentation that's come out, and clearly what it's telling us is that greater than 50% of all personnel in the MOD will require some form of AI literacy or reskilling over the next 5 years. We're going to see the change, so the future is going to be moving from that kind of, where we are with physical fitness and specialist technical knowledge to more machine teaming, the human machine teaming coming over the next 5 years that drives that. We'll see a growth in human machine trust. We'll see challenges to ethical and moral judgment in terms of how the future warfighter delivers operational effectiveness and how we develop mission planning. So I think there's basically where we talk about the future warfighter, is going to require that mixture of sort of specialist, generalist, multi-domain skills. Training providers like ourselves, training designers, will have to be able to readily adopt content quickly through the use of AI at pace to meet the new and emerging requirements. And we'll drive that by a proliferation of AI-driven technology as we go forward to get to that mission readiness and operational effectiveness that the defence is going to be looking for.
So AI will affect the way warfighters are trained, but it will also affect the training they need. It's
exactly that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I guess the Navy would say we've always been doing remotely operated equipment, but now we're seeing with drones and human machines, you say that very many warfighter tasks will be remotely operation of systems. So is that something that not just the Navy but the Army and Air Force are?
I think it's as Aid's mentioned, I think it's the basics, just basic literacy of AI. ChatGPT, how do I use that? Where can I use it as a tool? That will start to happen, and we've got to ramp that up. People do need that training. But I think in the future, and I think I mentioned it in our last podcast, Andy, was the meta AI. When we start to see AI thinking about AI decisions, and that is going to come, okay? And we'll be taking, so the original decision will be made by the AI. We'll think about it afterwards with the meta AI, and we'll start to collate that great amount of data to retrain the LLMs. there's a lot of ethical and moral judgment that we've got to put in place, and I don't think we've got the tools in place to think that through at the moment. So the next 5 years really are going to, and I think our HR colleagues probably will find a place in that, in terms of how we program, how the biases work within those programs, the biases within the programmers, and how that impacts the AI. So there's a lot to think through in terms of, as we start to apply these tools and give them more and more, as I said, this machine human meshing, and we give the AI more and more responsibility, I guess, in the decision making.
But I think to your point, Andy, just a moment ago, the training piece, training has to be relevant regardless, and that is one sort of constant I think that we'll see between now and the sort of 2030 timeframe. There is no point in delivering any sort of training if it's not going to be relevant to the individuals that need that training to be able to deliver what we're asking, or what the Navy is asking them to deliver on the front line, be that in a more traditional sort of operating the aircraft carrier sort of type, or operating uncrewed maritime systems. So one of the key areas I think we will see develop over the next 4 or 5 years in the training contract in Selborne will be how AI can enable change agility. So if we look at some of the spiral development that we've seen in both the land and maritime domain in Ukraine, and the speed with which necessity is driving the development of capabilities, predominantly in the FPV sort of drone and uncrewed system space, we're talking now days and weeks as opposed to weeks and months. And therefore, I think we're going to have to use AI systems to automate processes that are, and systems that hitherto have been really sort of mandrolic and lengthy. Training design, to my mind, lends itself really well to using AI to create a training needs analysis, to create training documentation, and then not just create it and park it and then deliver training to it, but allow it to iterate really quickly to be able to react to what's happening on the front line.
Absolutely fascinating, and things we might have imagined in 2030 already happening in some Ukraine to an extent. Patrick, could you paint a picture of where, and maybe more on the hardware side?
Yeah, so I think just building on what was said just now, we think about training offers right now as being training of people, right? The classic reflex. And we're building these big synthetic environments in order to enable that training in virtual ways. And I think in the future, we'll get better ways to inject real world content into those environments with low latency. So right now, training content is often quite static. It's often quite old, quite hard to produce in many ways. But if we could, I think I was talking the word injects, capture things from a real world location, bring them back into training really quickly to create those spaces. That obviously makes training better, but I think the next step on from that is going to be thinking about how do you train the AIs themselves in the same environment the humans were previously experiencing. And if you look at, for example, from different world entirely, think about how they're training self-driving cars these days, right? They're building massive simulations, training through lots of scenarios they can invent of things that would happen very, very rarely, but testing the AI against this. So I think we'll see some kind of fusion between the training environment that we built for our humans, training subjects, in the end will be a training environment we may also use for our AI agent training as well. Maybe not entirely in 2030, but certainly beyond that. And so I think that's quite an exciting evolution of what you think about training going into an operational landscape as well over time.
Yeah, no, Andy, I'd just like to jump in on that, because I absolutely agree with that point from Patrick. And I think just lifting it up that level, you and I, Andy, have been for a sort of quite a long journey, you longer than me, in terms of modeling and simulation interoperability. And so when we get to that, when we start to get to that adaptive mission planning, that sort of mission readiness, as we start to see the growth in AI in the different forces, and and you can look at that as the sort of the alliances that we have and those kind of things, defence artificial intelligence strategy probably leans to the now and the next couple of years. But we know in modelling and simulation, we went on a long, painful journey in terms of interoperability, standards, those kind of things. In terms of force interoperability and how we operate and how we fight in the future, I don't know if anybody's looked at the same kind of challenge that we saw with modelling and simulation, and how that's going to affect us operationally in the future. If I don't know, one side's using ChatGPT and the others using Copilot, what does that mean to us, right? If two different forces are using the different AI engines, I simplified that, right? But you can see the challenges we're gonna, you know, as I said, myself and yourself have been through the modeling the simulation challenge. Is that going to be the same? Are we going to grab those lessons learned and implement that into AI at the moment as we start to get to that mission readiness and force interoperability? Just a question, really, and it may be something for us to put forward.
Well, maybe AI will check the checkers and
there you go. Meta AI again, right?
Yeah. I mean, okay, so I don't know whether this picture is just going to happen anyway, or will the enemy force the pace? I mean, do you, without getting too controversial, do you think we're moving quickly enough in defence?
I think if you looked at, so we went to, you know, we were in ISEC and those sort of 5 years ago, six years ago, to Patrick's world, right? VR was new. Well, probably it was new 10 years ago, and then it's matured because it was becoming better and better and finding its niche. When you look at ISEC now, this year was AI enabled VR, or everything was AI on the world. I think it's caught us unaware, the same as VR did, right? How did we find this? We found this great solution, but how did we put it into training? It was almost trying to find a problem to solve. Whereas I think AI can do so much, but I don't think I think it's caught us unawares in terms of how we use it, the regulations for using it, the AI strategy, those kind of things. I think that's catching up, and so I think we're in a bit of a lull in a lot of early adopters. You know, Age saying about the companies that he's working. I'm mentioning the companies that I'm working with, and Patrick's talking about what they're implementing into the headsets. But I think the MOD is probably going to catch up to that, and how then the regulations and the interoperability regulations, you know, standards and those kind of things will support the implementation and augment how we use the capabilities. So I think we're just in that kind of early adopter lag phase personally, but I think there's some great opportunities for us.
Yeah, I'd echo what Alex said there. I mean, it's sort of interesting to see how working for a company that both sells into private and public sector AI systems, you know, across the public sector, predominantly in the customer experience space rather than the sort of defence domain, how more open the private sector is to early adoption of this sort of techniques as opposed to the public sector. And I suppose, understandably so, there is a degree of nervousness around the security, particularly in the defence world, about opening up access to a large language model to the wider internet, and all of your secrets effectively being lost to you. And also, I think as well, to gain a better understanding of what it is, actually the benefits that are there. So I think defence could probably move a bit faster, particularly in the AI enablement in the back office space to make it more efficient, more effective, save the taxpayer money. And then I think I would judge that the pace would always be a little bit sort of slower in the more sort of frontline defence capabilities.
I mean, Patrick, maybe you don't just have military customers, do you? And what's your insight on other markets?
Yeah, I think everyone's struggling with some of the same sort of governance and policy challenges that both Alex and Aidan picked up. I probably make one of the points maybe more like a hardware-centric point, is that we see these concepts of AI being deployed at the front line, people wearing soldiers wearing smart glasses, being able to do fancy identification tasks in real time autonomously. I would say that lots of these really cutting edge AI technologies are extremely power intensive, and so deploying them on the edge, so to say, like on your face or even on your body, is going to be a challenge for several years. And that means that lots of that will get shifted back to a network model where some big data center in the background doing the really computation intensive stuff. And that creates a ton of challenges for what network you have, how you think about that network's resilience in operation conditions, all those kind of things. So I'd say that there are some, I think, still significant technology challenges. on the field deployments of these kind of things. It will certainly come in the back office, I would say, soon. It will come to the headsets or operational style deployments that we're seeing.
Very interesting. Yeah, actually, soldiers running around with huge battery packs is.
That's how it will start, but they will be big. So I think it's not that those glasses themselves are very small, but the things to compute them are much bigger than that. Yeah.
Although I suspect lots of people are going to have smart glasses of some kind in 2030. Is that something, say, for training? I don't say the Navy. That is anyone looking at that, using smart glasses, which are coming along, to help people so they know maybe they need less training, not they have guides. And is that something that is being looked at to reduce the training need?
Yeah, so I mean, we already have VR deployed across the Selborne contract and also in our sister contracts at Fire Service College, where we deliver defence firefighting. We use a system of augmented and VR headsets to train. So I would see that absolutely as the next sort of progression on from that. And then when you combine them with systems such as with a Prism as well, where you can put training material through those VR headsets that allow an individual just to pick up a headset, particularly in the engineering space in the workshop, and work at their own speed and their own pace through a problem, or take that technology, deploy it in the front line, and allow a team that are about to do a really complex engineering procedure or process on a ship or piece of equipment that's deployed, to be able to reach back into the training system and use VR to effectively do a dress rehearsal before they actually do the process live. So yeah, absolutely, tons of applications for that sort of technology going forward.
Convergence of the hardware and the software.
I see. Myself and Eddie spoke about this last week. I see the AI being really useful, where I have the training designers using all of the technical documentation to build out the training, but actually the same tools in the classroom, and they're using, because the main software we use is based on maintenance development, therefore it's exceptional in engineering, that are actually, why don't we give that to the student as well, right? And so they use all of the technical documentation that the training designers used, but they can ask their own questions to the AI, and then we're talking through. So the software we use has QR codes, right? So they can sit in the classroom, go through the course that's been developed by AI. They can use the same AI then to find the technical documentation, and then they can go out to the floor and the training floor. Let's say it's a piece of refrigeration, work on the fridge plant at the same time, and then use the glasses to scan the QR code, bring up the technical documentation on the headset, and then maintain it. And then when they go to sea, they've got the same capability, and they can draw down one at sea with a pair of VR glasses. Why not? Or smart glasses. And as Aid said, if they get stuck, they can then go back to the training that they've had to go back to rehearsal. So you can see the flow all the way through from design to delivery to reach back as well, by using similar or the same tools, and enabling and effectively, as Aid said, right, getting the sailor, the airman, the soldier to where operational quicker and faster, just by using that technology. But it's a seamless flow all the way through the training needs analysis, the design, the development, and delivery.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm super excited by that idea. Having taught nuclear reactor systems 30 years ago with overhead projectors, it all sounds super. Could bring every subject alive and make it much more interesting and memorable, which I guess is what. So we're sort of coming to the close now. We've covered a lot of ground. I just want to. It's not a trick question, but I suppose it's a sort of magic wand. There's lots of potential here to improve things, as we've talked about, and in fact some of it is not discretionary. We're going to have to do it because the nature of war is changing, and the way weapons and if you had a magic wand to sort of get us to that future that perhaps doesn't exist now, what I want to frame this in a sort of optimistic way. What is sort of something positive? That is, it just about educating everyone, the workforce, or is it about setting up some research facility and doing constant experimentation? Is there some magic wand that people are missing here to get?
But from my perspective, what I want to sort of wave a magic wand and have come true by 2030 in the area where I'm working is, I think, would be for us to be able to speed up and be more agile around the change process. Some of that will be enabled by AI, some of the technologies we've spoken about this morning. Some of that we will need to do in order to adopt the technologies that we've spoken about this morning as well. So mine's probably a little bit sort of quite a boring sort of, let's get rid of all of the governance or as much governance as we possibly can and have the trust in both sides to be able to go, here's a technology that we need to adopt. Let's get after it and get after it quickly, because at the moment our current processes just aren't quick enough to keep up with some of the really good capabilities that we could adopt in sort of training space. And by the time we have done, our enemies would have already moved on and adopted them and moved on.
Thank you, Aid. Alex, did you want to give that a go?
So I fully support what Aid's saying. I think it's our job to help and lean in as industry, to lean in to MOD, policymakers, and take them on the safe journey. So that's what we did. So clearly we got AI onto an OS system, which hadn't been done in the UK before, in training. We've got that secure and OS, but what we've done is we've taken the team on the journey. At the same time, I took the cyber team in our UK and they took me on the journey as well, to make sure that our policy was aligned. I think it's incumbent on us as the early adopters, and we will have the creative ideas and what we want to do with it, to take this time to take we've got the opportunity to take the policymakers on the journey with us. So to Aid's point, any of the blockers that come up, we can work through those together, put them in policy, but be agile, be flexible. This is about training those people to use that technology. As they said, if we don't have an agile capability that enables us to use this technology, we are going to get left behind, and that is going to impact us quite significantly, especially for the warfighter, the future warfighter. So we've really got to understand and work together with that journey at pace.
Thank you, Alex. And Patrick, your magic wand?
I think those are great points. I might just add one around the procurement cycle of things. I think lots of technologies are going to require some level of incubation, and they are quite risky, and are going to need the willingness of funders to fund projects that look somewhat like research projects in order to advance the progress of these things before ready for deployment. And I think if we don't do that, we leave it to our better funded adversaries to do that instead. So I think there's some need there for government to step up and be willing to fund those activities sooner rather than later.
Fantastic. Thank you, Patrick. I'm going to we'll bring it to a close, but I think fresh in the year 2026, where AI is not going away. It's going to affect both the way we deliver and design and deliver and evaluate training, but also going to affect the jobs the military do as well. And we kind of need to get a move on, don't we, about this? So now, I hope there's listeners, I certainly have myself, that we've had some great views we've heard today. So thank you very much, Aid, Alex and Patrick, for your time today, and thank you for your contributing to AI in Action.